So, What Strange Paradise is a story that I think of as a repurposed fairy tale. It's the Peter Pan fable reinterpreted as the story of a contemporary child refugee. We open on a scene of a migrant shipwreck off the coast of an unnamed island in Greece. It's Crete. I never say it's Crete, but it's Crete. Um, this boy, this 9-year-old boy named Amir, is the sole survivor. He wakes up on the beach. He sees the authorities coming towards him. He gets up and runs because he has no idea what the hell's going on. Stumbles through this forest, ends up stumbling onto the front yard of this local girl, this teenage girl named Vanna, who also has no idea what's going on, but decides to give him shelter. And from there, the book splits into two narratives. The before chapters tell you everything that led up to the shipwreck, and the after chapters tell you everything that happened from the moment the boy opens his eyes. Um, in my mind, it was an attempt to push a particular kind of liberal Western reader's tolerance for optimism and that everything will work out in the end no matter what to its breaking point, just to see what would happen. And it's mostly a story about the privilege of instantaneous forgetting. While I was writing this book, um, the famous photo of the child who had washed up on the shore, Ellen Curdy, is this photo that showed up, and it was a subject of intense sort of outrage, particularly in the Western sort of social media bubble. How could we let this happen? And within 2 days, Trump had said something stupid and everyone kind of moved on. And that idea of the privilege of temporarily being outraged by an injustice and then kind of moving on, because really, what are we going to do? Sit here forever? That's what I was writing against. But it's nothing like American War. American War is a kitchen sink book. It's got a million things going on. And this is very focused. It's less than half the length. And it had a very different reception. I mean, all of these books tend to take about 10 years, of which the writing part is maybe a year. So it's sort of the better part of a decade of just thinking about it. And I'd been thinking about What Strange Paradise for a long time before American War came out. It started in 2012 when I was in Egypt covering the aftermath of the Arab Spring. My buddy was driving me around town. He was complaining about the rent. The rent's too high. The rent's too high. And at one point I said, what's the price of an apartment in your building, for example? And he said, well, do you mean the locals' price or do you mean the Syrians' price? And I was like, well, hold on a second. What the hell's the Syrians' price? What are you talking about? And he said, well, we've had these influx of people who have come in recently, and you can charge them 3 times as much. I mean, what are they going to do? Go somewhere else? And just the casualness of that cruelty, the understanding that these people were fit to be exploited on account of them having to leave their homeland, that was the instigating point. And so I was working on things that eventually became this book for, again, the better part of a decade. And finally, I had a draft. I sent it to my agent. My agent quite liked it. And then she sent it to my publishers. And I don't think my publishers liked it at all because it's a very different book than American War. And I had seen what it looked like when publishers are excited about your novel. And so I knew what it looked like when publishers aren't excited. Really, my Canadian publisher, Jared Bland, was the only one who had high hopes for it. And so we go through this process. The vast majority of the foreign editors who bought American War have nothing to do with this book. They want nothing to do with it. And I was ready for it to sort of derail my career. And then I got very lucky on two fronts. I got very lucky with a very positive New York Times review that I wasn't expecting at all. And then I won this award up in Canada that was sort of life-changing for me. But otherwise, I think that book would have been the end of my career because everyone who loved the dystopian, speculative, futuristic nature of American War got this very tightly focused contemporary fable that was nothing like it. Sometime next year, barring disaster, of which there are many, many disasters, if I'm very fortunate, sometime next spring, I've got a book coming out that's my first nonfiction book. The working title is One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This. And it's about reassessing my relationship to the West and what the West actually stands for, if anything, in light of the last 6 months. From the perspective of a kid who grew up in a very repressive part of the world and grew up constantly looking to the West as the kind of negative space of all that repression. Once I make it over there, all of these things are going to be different. They're going to be the exact opposite. And to see that in the context of waking up every morning and watching the worst thing in the world and being told that this is good and important and needs to continue happening. It's a deeply political book. I don't, again, it might be career ruining, but fortunately, there's not much of a career to ruin. So I'm in the clear on that front at least.